Hey guys, it's Vin again from The Better Gentleman, and this week, for our weekly unboxing, we're going to be checking out the Galaxy Watch 3. Alright, so I know I'm super late to this unboxing, but there is a really crazy story behind it. So this is the larger variant of the Galaxy Watch 3, which I believe is 45 millimeters, and it is the LTE variant. So this is the most expensive version that they have of the Galaxy Watch 3, and I believe it retails for like about $479. However, using like various discounts, I was able to get this watch down to $86. But all of that did come at a price. For example, this was delayed so much. Like I ordered this like I want to say like about 2 months ago now, and it took Samsung about a month and a half to get it out to me. And on top of that, I still don't have the band that is supposed to come with this. Like I ordered the band at the same time that I ordered this watch, and it has been delayed for I want to say like the 4th time now, and Samsung doesn't have a date to when they will be able to get that out to me. And so I've just had this watch sitting here waiting for the band to show up, and it still has not. And in fact, I already had to go ahead and trade in my Gear S3, and I've just kind of been without a watch. I did have this Willful smartwatch, but I had to go ahead and give this to my wife. So I've just been here without a watch ever since I sent in my Gear S3. And even though I don't have the band that officially goes with this watch, I did read online that the bands from the Gear S3 should fit this. So I'm really hoping that it does fit so I can have a watch again. Anyways, let's get right into it. And just like their phones, you'll have your literature and stuff separately from the watch. And the watch does have this nice little cover on it. Wow, that's actually really nice. It looks very similar to the Gear S3, but I can tell it's not as, well actually it looks about as bulky, but definitely looks a whole lot more polished. And in this compartment we have our charging cable. So it doesn't have like a dock like the Gear S3 did, and instead it's a little mini wireless charger that has a magnet on it, so you can like set it down on a table. But honestly, I kind of prefer the older one that they had, just because you'd be able to set it down, and if you had like a fixed band, you would be able to place it down properly. But luckily I still have my old one, so I don't really have to worry about it too much. And other than that, we have our quick start guide and their terms and conditions. But anyways, that's everything inside the box. Like I said earlier, the watch looks very nice. I would have actually preferred getting the silver model, but that one was about $50 more expensive than this one. And I kind of figured that, you know, it would be a bit different than what I'm used to. All right, so let's see if I can get this old band to stick. And super important, I guess you definitely want to make sure you get it on the right side. I did not. And one last note about installing the band is that you will hear a little bit of a click whenever it does sit in properly, and you should not be able to pull it apart. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and connect this to my phone. And the cool thing about these is that they'll pop up right on your phone if you have a Samsung. So we're just going to select that, and it should pair. Wow, that was actually... But yeah, you can just go ahead and verify the confirmation code, and you can tap to connect. And once your phone is done pairing up with it, it'll say congratulations on your new watch. And then you will have to hit agree to their terms and agreements. And after that, you'll have this little pop-up over here asking if the Galaxy Watch 3 plugin can link to your Galaxy Watch 3. And then after that, we have like a couple more options. And typically whenever like this stuff pops up, I always hit skip. You see like they have this little thing for marketing information. You don't want that little pop-up popping up on your phone and on your watch. They do have this one over here to find your watch and find your phone, so I do want that one. And then mapping technologies by here, so that one I do like as well. But this report diagnostic info and receipt of the marketing information, I definitely just always skip that. All right, hit next. And so now it's going to see if we want to restore any of your watch backups. So I'm going to check if it can actually pull over my information from the Gear S3. And it cannot. So that's okay. We're going to hit auto backup anyways, just in case I do have to reset this watch for whatever reason. And we're going to hit next. And so this one is probably different from the one that's just the Bluetooth variant. So this watch over here is the LTE variant. And because of that, you do need a plan to use this watch. I'm sorry, I should say to use the LTE functionality on this watch. I'm gonna go ahead and skip that for now. Okay, now we're done with the setup, and so we're gonna go ahead and look at the watch here for a second. My favorite part of all of the Galaxy watches out there is that you can go ahead and use this little bezel to navigate. And I find this super helpful and super distinctive of its competition. And you guys can go through this tutorial. It's basically the same as the Gear S3, so I'm kind of used to it. You have a back button over here. You have a home button over here. You have a quick panel if you swipe down, and it does have a sensor so you can cover the screen whenever you want to turn it off. Also, your notifications are going to be to the left, and you can get there by turning your bezel to the left, or you can go ahead and swipe to the left as well. Again, the bezel thing is just one of my favorite things about these watches. I definitely prefer to just swiping around all the time. And one thing I want to point out is that this watch does use Tizen OS, which is Samsung's in-house OS. So it does use Samsung's in-house apps. There are like third-party apps you can install. And so if you don't use Samsung's native apps on your phone, you might notice a little bit of a discrepancy whenever it comes to, like, let's say your weather. And real quick, while this watch is setting up, I'll go ahead and throw up some quick specs for you. Alrighty guys, so now it's been about a couple of days with this watch, and I've basically been able to form all my opinions. And it's basically the same opinions that I've had for the Gear S3. And it's, in a lot of ways, it is basically the same, just updated hardware. But just as with the Gear S3, it has the perks of being a Samsung watch, but it also has the major disadvantages that come with it. So I'm going to start off with the pros first, and the things that this watch gets right, definitely the design. I think this is one of the most attractive Android watches out there. And the second biggest advantage of this watch is that it has the, I would say, the most complete package as far as hardware goes for any Android watch out there. And when I say hardware, I'm talking about the sensors that it has for your health monitoring, and also like whenever you just consider like the simple things like the screen on this is like a fabulous AMOLED display. Meanwhile, a lot of the Android watches out there still use LCD. And kind of along the same lines of hardware, this watch has a lot of customizability compared to the other smartwatches out there. You might have noticed that earlier this had a silver band. I was just able to go ahead and get another gold band because I thought that looked better with the black. And beyond that, you can get different skins for this. You can get different screen protectors. You can get different bumper cases. You can get different bezels. And it's been my experience that whenever you have other Android smartwatches, you don't really get that customizability. And also, this is, well, me just speculating a little bit, but I do expect these watches to be supported by Samsung for at least as long as they supported the Gear S3, which they still were before I traded it in. And that had been going for 4 years. So I do expect these watches to last quite a bit as well. And for the 4 years that I did have the watch, I never had any issues with the hardware itself. And I was pretty rough with my watches. I mean, I wore it like basically during everything. If I was working on a car, if I went out swimming, like any activity, I always had my watch with me. And I never had any issues with anything failing. So just going off of my past experience with Samsung watches, I do expect this to last quite a bit, but only time can tell. All right, now we're going to move on to the cons. And like I said before, I think this is the best hardware you can get on an Android compatible watch. This is not an Android watch, and that's the biggest con of this, is that it runs Tizen OS. It has a lot of drawbacks. And the biggest drawback is that there is no native support for any Google application. So you get no Gmail natively built in. You don't get your Google Calendar built in. If you have, like, I believe like Google had like a notes thing that they used to sync up with their other smartwatches. You do not get that on here. You do not get Google Maps. And you also just miss out on the entire Play Store. You only get the Tizen-based Galaxy Store. And that Galaxy Store is lacking quite a bit. Like there's no Facebook on there, there's no Instagram on there, there's no Messenger on there, there's no WhatsApp on there, I believe. It's just missing a whole bunch. And the apps that are on there, I'm granted, to their credit, they do work, I think, in my opinion anyways, pretty well for smartwatch apps. But they are like overall lackluster if you compare it to anything that's on like, well, the Apple Watch, which this is priced to compete against. And because of the lack of app support, I highly don't recommend anybody using the LTE version of this or paying so much more for an LTE version of this watch. Because if you use any apps that are not Samsung native apps, they will not sync up properly on this watch. You will still get notifications from all of the other apps, but like if you use like me, I use Android messages instead of using Samsung messages, so I cannot actually view my messages on this watch. I can only respond to the messages I get through the notifications tab. So let's say you get a message on Messenger, right? As long as it pops up on the watch and as long as you see it in the notification tab, you can respond to that message. However, you don't have the actual Messenger app on here, so you can't launch it if you don't get a notification. So you won't be able to start like a new conversation or send out a new message that you are not responding to. And also you can't like browse Instagram on here unless you go through like the web browser, which is kind of hit and miss. And to kind of continue on about the lack of app support, this also is not compatible with a lot of the fitness apps out there. It's mostly reliant on the Samsung fitness apps that Samsung produces themselves. So really, if you are considering this watch, you have to think a lot about of the app support that it has, and if you're okay with just mostly getting notifications and missing out on the native built-in apps. And the other thing that really bugs me about this watch is that the battery life on it is not so great. You can get anywhere between 2 to 4 days depending on your usage. 4 days would mean like you're using all the low power settings, you're using Bluetooth only, you're not connected to Wi-Fi. So basically to get up to 4 days of battery life, you have to disable like 90% of the functions of this watch. So a more realistic expectation would be somewhere around that 2-day mark. Alright guys, and the last con that I have for this watch is that it is so prohibitively expensive, like ridiculously expensive. It is $479 retail, which is just absolutely absurd for what you get. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I still think it's a pretty decent watch. It's just at that price point, like, I get that they're trying to compete with Apple, but this watch can't do half of the stuff that the Apple watches can. And I mean, I think this would have been a perfect watch if it had Android OS on it, or I guess they call it Wear OS, but it doesn't, and it really holds this watch back. And let's say you get past the cons, like you can definitely, like you can find this watch for way cheaper than $479. I got this for $86.99 after stacking discounts and trading in my Gear S3. And honestly, like, I mean, I think it's a pretty fair watch for $86, especially because it's what I've been kind of experiencing with the Gear S3, and it's just like a little bit of an update to it. All right, so now let's move on to the grading. I've gone through the pros, gone through the cons, and this grade might seem a bit harsh, but I'm gonna go ahead and give it like a B minus. And the reason I'm giving it a B minus is because I still think that this is the best hardware you can get for something that's compatible with Android. However, because of its price point and because it actually lacks Android OS and the apps that you would expect to have, it makes it very difficult like to recommend this watch to anybody that isn't like really into the whole Samsung ecosystem. And really that's who this watch is really for. It's for somebody that's really into the whole Samsung ecosystem, not the Android ecosystem, the Samsung ecosystem. Meaning you're using Samsung Internet, you're using Samsung Messages, you're using the stock phone dialer on your Samsung phone, you're using Samsung Contacts. But if you use any like Google applications, or because, I mean, I assume that you do because you're looking for a watch that's compatible with Android, those apps will not be on this watch. You don't get Google Assistant on this, you get Bixby Assistant, which nobody uses. And by using like Samsung Messages, you lose out like on the great things that Android Messages has to offer. And for a lot of these things, you do get to find some workarounds for them. Like for example, this doesn't have a YouTube application or a YouTube Music application, but you can go ahead and go on the web browser and save it as a bookmark. And I haven't tried it yet, but I'm pretty sure that would work for Android messages as well. But again, there's a lot of workarounds you would have to find. And again, it's kind of hard to recommend something like this that requires so many workarounds at the price point of $479. And really, before you purchase this watch, go through your list of apps and think of like how you are using your apps. Like if you need them to be on your phone, because if you're okay with just getting notifications and responding to notifications, which I mean, I think most people would, like on a smartwatch, because going through your messages and everything on a smartwatch is kind of hard to do. It's just like great for quick responses. So if you're okay with just responding to the notifications, it ain't half bad. And the reason I'm sticking to like a B- instead of like something lower is because this watch does get a lot right, in my opinion. And if you can get it at the right price, I think it's phenomenal. Like, I mean, I got it for 86. I guess that like would be like a best case scenario for a lot of people. But if you can get it less than, I would say like about 180, maybe $200 at the high end, I mean, I think that this is a great watch for your Samsung device. I wouldn't recommend it for anybody that has an Android device, like that is not a Samsung device, because you would have to like change a lot of your usage. Alright guys, and that's it for me today. Again, these are just my opinions about this watch. I'd love to hear your opinions, just leave them down below in the comments. And as always, if you guys have any questions about this watch, feel free to leave them down there as well. If you guys enjoyed this video or found it helpful, please consider giving it a like and consider subscribing for more content like this, and I'll see you guys next time.